The human heart often wrestles with one of life's greatest fears, that everything passes away too quickly. Time feels like sand slipping through our fingers. Days vanish, seasons change, and nothing seems to last. Wesley knew that this feeling of despair over time's passing is one of the most profound struggles of the soul. And yet, he offers a remedy: faith. Faith, in Wesley's language, isn't mere belief in abstract ideas or doctrines. It is a living trust in the trustability of the Eternal One who gives life. It's the kind of trust that anchors you when everything else is changing, when time moves on, when life ends, when moments fade. For Wesley, this faith is not something you create on your own. It is a gift of grace, a divine empowerment that allows you to trust the God who stands before and after all things. And so the great question becomes this: will the soul choose to trust in God's eternal goodness? Or will it remain locked in self-alienation, trapped in despair, unable to trust? The entire fate of the soul, whether eternally happy or eternally lost, hinges on that trust. Faith is the door through which we walk into eternity. To live by faith, Wesley says, is to walk daily in awareness of the unseen Eternal One, to see through the transient flow of days and months into the presence of the One who does not pass. This kind of awareness gives everything its proper proportion. It helps you see temporal things, work, possessions, ambitions, not as ultimate realities, but as part of the greater tapestry of God's eternal story. Faith places everything in its right scale. What once seemed overwhelming becomes small beside eternity. What once seemed fleeting becomes radiant when seen as part of God's plan. Wesley insists that God presides over every life with as much patience and attention as over the entire universe. That's a staggering thought. The same divine wisdom that governs galaxies is also attentive to your personal story, to your joys, your struggles, your decisions. No life is insignificant in God's sight. Even if you live only a short time on earth, a few decades, or perhaps just a few fleeting years, your life still has infinite value because it is lived within the horizon of eternity. But that awareness brings both sobriety and exhilaration. On one hand, it reminds us of how brief our time on earth really is, how fragile we are, how easily our days pass. Yet, on the other hand, it fills us with wonder. For this brief time is our opportunity to live in the light of eternity, to make choices that echo forever. We are not just drifting through time. We are standing within a sacred corridor where eternity meets the present. And that brings us to what Wesley calls the decision of faith. For Wesley, the vision of eternity is not meant to stay as a mere theory or speculation. It is always a call to decision, a here and now choice with eternal consequences. He was not trying to entertain his hearers with philosophical musings about time and infinity. He was pressing on their hearts a question that can't be ignored. If your life is cast within time, which stands always in relation to eternity, what are you choosing to do with it? Every person faces that question. Eternity itself calls us to choose. Will we enter into a relationship of eternal happiness with the life-giver? Or will we turn away and live in alienation from that happiness? We are rational beings, created with the power to choose. Wesley never tired of saying that human freedom matters. God, in His love, has given us the power to decide how we will live within the time we are given. And that decision, how we live out our days, how we relate to God and to others, is decisive for eternity. That is why Wesley's preaching, especially his evangelical preaching, always leads to this single point. Each of us is right now making a decision about eternity. Every moment is an opportunity to align our time with eternity. The gospel is the invitation, and now is the only moment that truly belongs to us. The past is gone. The future is unknown, but this very moment is where eternity touches your life. There is a great difference, Wesley says, between the soul that glorifies God joyfully, even in the loss of earthly things, and the soul that clings to those things and resents their loss. The first is at peace, resting in the eternal goodness of God. The second is restless, bitter, always grieving what time has taken away. The question, then, is not simply whether one believes in eternity, but whether one has oriented one's heart toward God's eternal goodness or toward transient things that cannot last. Wesley is crystal clear. No one becomes eternally happy or miserable except by their own choice. God does not impose misery. He does not arbitrarily assign joy. Grace opens before us constant options to move toward truth, to move toward the light. Every moment in time is an opportunity to choose trust over fear, love over pride, grace over resistance. There is no divine decree that condemns anyone to unhappiness, just as there is no automatic decree that guarantees joy. God's grace always invites, always enables, always leaves the door open. But the decision to walk through that door remains ours. Those who, by faith, share in the life of God through Christ are drawn into what Wesley calls a blessed eternity. That means living in harmony with God's own creative will and working within history, participating in what God is doing, not standing apart from it. The happy life, in this view, is not about comfort or ease. It's about sharing in the divine rhythm of creation and redemption. By contrast, the miserable life is its opposite, a life that has cut itself off from God's life. It is alienated, inwardly divided, turned away from the source of joy. When we choose temporal values, wealth, pleasure, reputation, over the Creator, we become ill-timed, as Wesley might say. Our lives lose rhythm with eternity. We live off beat, out of focus, chasing what fades and ignoring what lasts. This is, in Wesley's theology, the ongoing consequence of the fall, that original distortion in human nature that left us turned inward upon ourselves. Humanity's deepest problem is not just moral failure but misalignment, being out of step with eternity. We spend our days obsessing over the temporary while neglecting the everlasting. And that off-centeredness, that spiritual imbalance, will remain our human condition until grace changes our nature from within. Only grace can realign us, restoring our rhythm with eternity, teaching us again to live as creatures of both time and eternity. Grace, for Wesley, is not just pardon for sin. It is power, the power to live rightly within time, to make holy use of our fleeting days, and to prepare our souls for eternal communion with God. In this way, faith and grace together form the bridge between time and eternity. Faith is the trusting leap, grace is the sustaining strength, and eternity is the horizon toward which both are directed. So, when Wesley asks his hearers to decide now, he is not speaking about a mere emotional moment of conversion. He is describing a daily reality, a posture of the soul that constantly chooses trust, gratitude, and alignment with the eternal. Every morning becomes an invitation to choose eternity over vanity, grace over sin, God's time over our own impatience. In the end, Wesley's teaching reminds us that eternity is not something that begins after death. It begins now. Wherever faith awakens trust in the Eternal One, every moment lived in faith is already a foretaste of eternity. And just as eternity reveals the constancy of God through time, Wesley will next turn to another closely related truth, the omnipresence of God, the astounding reality that the same Eternal One who governs all time also fills every space. Just as no moment is without God, no place is without His presence.